We're going to begin with a prelude. We're having camera troubles. That's why a little more of the scurrying around is going on. Gary's going to film like he does so much of our stuff. And so, you're not really on camera like you might be, but here we are. Let's begin. Jeff? Doesn't that a nice touch? Welcome to Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church. We are a beacon of progressive religious thought here in the South Bay. I like to say we're the oldest Unitarian Universalist church west of the Mississippi. Sadly, that's not true. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Historically, as old as we may not be, we do work hard to be a modern community welcoming to all peoples of creeds, races, sexual orientations, and gender identities, preferences. In tribute to the hardworking people that built this church, I encourage people to turn off their cell phones. You might not have had a chance to practice that recently. It feels good to be able to tell people what to do publicly. Gary and Leanne are tired of me telling them what to do. This week is we have a writing group week. If you want to join us, we do it on Zoom, but we also, people come in, usually in the sanctuary or outside if it's nice. The topic is that illegal thing I did, which has garnered quite a bit of attention. We just had Susan Brown, if you didn't watch yesterday, on our Death and Dying series. This coming Saturday, we're going to walk through sort of some of the mechanical, legal, paper documents that would prepare yourself and others of your family to, in your demise. So, it might be a good idea to just put that into place. We just did Laundry Love. That has gone pretty well, but it's actually kind of expensive. We're spending about $300 a month, which is too much because it's our only one of our few active ministries at the moment. But if anybody wants to donate particularly to that, that helps. We're not going inside with the folks, but we're going to go back inside, I think, in August when it's a little bit safer. We just started another round of Racism 101, which is in this 11-week course that we sort of love, and we've pulled it into 6, and I think there's a little bit of debate about whether it's going to be expanded or not, right? There was a request that we pull it longer, so I don't know where we are with that. I don't think that's been decided. But it's still open. We're going to close that group after this Thursday, so it's Thursday evening. You can jump in on the website if you're interested. We'd love to have you. Because that sort of level of awareness and justice issues around racism is obviously in the air. We have some good news about a grant that we've applied for. As many of you know, we've organized these Sunday Zoom meetings that reached out to much of the congregation at the start of the pandemic after George Floyd was murdered. Many of us were raw with emotion around that issue. The whole nation was. In fact, the world was. During this period of lively discussions, we committed to what we call the deeper dive, and to learn more about what's happening and what we could do and our role in it. So this started with an 11-week guide that I was just talking about, racism and white privilege, where we met weekly to unpack our own unexamined biases. We discovered there were quite a few. This led to another deeper dive commitment to understand why diverse membership sort of lacks in our church and UU churches generally. We discussed each chapter of the book, Mistakes and Miracles. You might have seen Nancy Palmer-Jones and Karen Lynn here, who did a service just 3 weeks ago. This helped us learn what other congregations are doing and addressing the implicit bias and institutional racism that exists within many UU congregations, and how and why we don't have the true diversity reflected in the community. So we're engaging with that. After meeting for over a year now, it's been over a year, the group's committed to an intentional action, and amidst the ongoing journey, we were made aware of this UU spirit level grant to assist congregations in unraveling the institutional racism that exists. So we applied for this grant with the goal of bringing in a dedicated person into our sort of staff fold to forge a path towards being more multicultural. Out of the many congregations that applied, all the work that we did, I'm proud to stand here and tell you that we were one of the few awarded this grant. So, the $50,000 over the next 2 years, but we need to match those funds to show our commitment to social justice and anti-oppression. And much will unfold over the next few weeks. There's been weekly discussions. There's a meeting tomorrow night within RE folks are welcome to join in about this. And we're charting a path towards a more full faith movement, and where people of all backgrounds can thrive. And so that is ongoing, and that is really probably the most exciting thing that's happened since I've been here. And so there we are. I think that's pretty exciting news. We can have a full-time, staff person on doing religious education and doing outreach to the community, and fill up this hall and fill it up in a more diverse way, which would be great. Okay. Board meetings are open, by the way. They're all listed online on the website. You can get to them. And we're also sort of opening up board positions too. So we have this kind of, I don't know, slate's the wrong word, but we have invited some people to apply to be on the board, but in an act of being more transparent, if you are interested in being in a leadership position in the church, the board's a good place to do that. And you could talk to one of us, and we're going to have an annual meeting on the last Sunday in June, and we will, award those. We will vote on such matters. Okay, enough business. This almost makes me want to feel like I'm going to set myself on fire. Let's take just a minute to settle from all that good news as it is. The words come from Claudine Olivia. We like this challenge for mothers and mothering, to celebrate those who have taken on the task of nurturing a young one baby child or a youth into adulthood child. We stop on this Sunday to celebrate those who've nourished the light of truth and compassion in growing minds and hearts. We stop to celebrate those who've committed time and money and energy to growth of others in this world, mothering beyond this strict category. We light this chalice to celebrate and hold dear the flame of love. So I did a rough estimate. About 65% of the adult members in our community are women. Mostly I just made that up, but I think it's about right. Roughly 2/3 of that 65% have been mothers. And that means we have a large target audience to ask what a mother and what mothering is meant to a number of people. What surprised you about the experience of being a mother? What are the differences between being a kid and being a mother? What wisdom do you have to share? And really whatever else feels poignant in the journey around mothering. So I want to get out of the way. I'm not a mother, obviously, although I've been accused of that with another phrase following it. And I wanted to turn it over to the pulpit, to the experts on the subject. So we have a number of people. You'll hear from them. There'll be no sermon today, but we'll hear wisdom from the ranks of our own folks. And that is going to begin immediately with our own Vivian Powell, who's going to step up, use microphones that are already turned on, and tell us all about it.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back. This is my first time back at church, and to see all your smiling faces, it's really wonderful. You smile with your eyes. That's My little homily is called Raising a Biracial Child. When my son was born in 1987, I had great hopes that he would be successful, educated, happy, loved, just like you wished for your kids. I was naive though, because I was not worried about whether he would be accepted in the community. I was not worried if he'd be constantly quizzed about his identity, if one day he'd have to choose a side. I say I was naive because I should have been worried, very worried. My son is biracial. My family comes from China, and his father's family comes from Germany and France. I'm a first-generation immigrant, but his father's family has lived in Western New York for 6 or 7 generations. Some of you have met my son. His name is Matt. He's now 34. He has 2 kids and a beautiful wife, and they live in Durham, North Carolina. With his ethnically ambiguous facial features, Matt is almost always mistaken for something other than biracial. He's been mistaken for Latino, Filipino, Hawaiian. You can imagine the surprised looks from his teachers and friends when I first showed up to pick him up from school. They didn't expect a person to look like me to be picking him up. Or when his white dad brought him to baseball games. Most of the time we ignored the whispers and kind of occasional comments and stares, but I drew the line when Matt was in high school, when his band teacher nicknamed his best friend Ho Chi Minh. He was the brutal North Vietnamese dictator. Although Matt wasn't called a name, both he and his friend felt very othered, very uncomfortable. And he was reluctant, but I called the mother of this other kid. She was white, he was an adoptee from Korea, and together we went to the principal to ask the teacher to stop the name calling. We asked for a formal apology, which never came. We raised Matt in rural New York, where he was one of only a few children of color, some transracial adoptees, some very occasional black family in our neighborhood who might have moved from urban Rochester to the suburbs. But I made sure that Matt visited his Chinese relatives a lot in California. We vacationed in places like New York City, Toronto, Boston, San Francisco, so he would see that he was not an anomaly everywhere. But in our day-to-day lives, it was so rare to see another family of color that one time when we were driving to the library, we saw an Asian American father and his son in the car. My 5-year-old Matt said, "Mom, look, an Asian family. Should we follow them?" When Matt was a teenager, some of our UU friends in New York got him involved in families with children from China, a nonprofit group that held a day camp for transracial adoptees every summer in Rochester. To my surprise, my son, an only child, really turned out to be a great big brother to these little Chinese kids in white families. He returned voluntarily 3 or 4 summers to be a camp counselor, to lead them in singing and dancing and craft projects, and he felt immediately a camaraderie with those little girls who, like himself, were straddling identities. And I took every opportunity to impress upon Matt that he should be proud to be an American of both Asian and European ancestry. I recounted the history of racism of Chinese in America, and I made sure that he understood that racism is alive and well in this country today. I counseled him that if he ever had to choose between his identities, that he should choose the one that needed the most defending. I think he took that to heart. Years later, when he was a young adult, I asked him, which box did you choose when you were forced to make a decision on these, government forms about your ethnicity and race? And he said, I chose Asian, Chinese. That made me happy, and it made me sad. I know that Matt does not feel wholly Chinese. In fact, he has imposter syndrome sometimes, as I do, because he doesn't look Chinese, he doesn't think Chinese, he doesn't speak Mandarin, he speaks better Spanish. He's not well versed in Chinese history or culture, and he thinks and feels most of the time like an American, like a normal American, AKA a white person. That's the norm, that's the default, that's what Western society was created for and by. And yet, society sees people like him and people like me as being different, perpetually alien, perpetually foreign, not belonging, and sometimes not even fully human. When Matt is forced to choose the side of him that needs the most defending, that means that he cries out in anguish when an elderly Asian man is kicked to the ground because he's being blamed for bringing COVID here. My son has to be vigilant against racial remarks and attacks. He has to contend with unrealistic stereotypes like, well, you must be really good at math, or you must play piano or know karate. He has to assert his manhood because Asian men have been historically emasculated by the media. The side of him that wonders, well, is it my mixed race? Am I not Chinese enough, or am I not white enough because I'm being excluded from this group or that? The side that empathizes with his fellow Asian Americans when they're made into caricatures, or worse, the side of him that wants to pass for white, but he feels like a fraud. Why should my son have to deny one part of himself to defend another? Why should he have to constantly deal with questions like, what are you? Why does he have to struggle in a world where people of color are still second-class citizens? Why does he have to feel betraying part of himself when he asserts his white male privilege, even when it's in defense of an oppressed person? Why does he have to explain himself to people who want to put him in a convenient little box? I don't have pat answers for these tough questions, but I pose them to you, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, for you to consider the kind of society that you want to be part of, where you want to raise your children. As UUs, we have a responsibility. Our faith calls us to act in a way that we respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And together, we can realize the dream of building a multicultural community here at PUUC.
Since we're not allowed to sing, we're going to listen to the best singer in the room. You. No, not me. We're going to sing Gather the Spirit, 347. Not that you're going to, we're going to try to eliminate the touching, so that's why we're not passing out books and orders of service. We'll be there soon enough.
This light, you are the
tiers of asks. I invited people also who couldn't be here to record their videos. So we're going to just see a video from Diana Prasad and I think.
So, Reverend Steve asked me to talk about motherhood, and since I like to follow rules but add my own spin to them, I'm going to talk about motherhood, if there is such a word, because as I was thinking about how I wanted to be a mother very badly, and how I was and currently am as an adult daughter, I found myself channeling back to my own mother and my own relationship with my mother. So let me give you a bit of history, real quickly. My mother, Jean Faulkner Durham, was the daughter of kind of a blue stocking. Talk about blue stockings and vegetarians, they kind of go together. My grandmother on my mom's side had been a teacher with a master's degree in mathematics, had taught at college, taught at a private girls' school in Georgia, and had owned property in her own name all before 1917. My mother was born when my grandmother was almost 40, another milestone that a lot of people didn't do. She was the youngest. I, too, am the youngest of just my brother and me. And I found as I was growing up that even though there are books that will tell you your mother's love is unconditional and your father's love you have to earn, I think that's Eric Fromm, The Art of Loving. Sure. I found that since my mom raised me all by herself from my 5th year, Dad had passed away, I found that I was always trying to impress, please, gain value, gain approval from my mother. It's taken me a long time to internalize the approval process so that I am the person being my own mother and giving myself that approval where I can and being honest when I can, where I need to go back and circle around and say to a group of people, I'm sorry, I need help, I've done this differently, or, hey, why can't you? So when I talk about how to be a mother, I had to think about how to be a better daughter and how would I have liked my mother to have done things differently. And I'll just give you one anecdote from my mother and me, one anecdote from my daughter. When I was 16 years old, almost 17, I applied to a number of colleges. I was not as wise about how people apply to colleges as students are today because the counseling wasn't there. The whole industry of the counseling wasn't there. I got home, I was 17, and I got home from some play rehearsal or drama thing that I was doing, and a letter from Middlebury College in Vermont was open on my bed, on my pillow. I had been accepted. My mother had opened the letter, and I felt completely violated. This was not characteristic of my mother. In my entire life, I don't think she ever opened a piece of mail up to that date and after that date, because it was a place where I found my voice. I basically said to her, how could you have not believed? How could you have not known that it was important to me to open that letter? And she said, if you didn't get accepted, I wanted to be able to cushion the blow. And in point of fact, what I learned from that, carrying on to my daughter, when my daughter's first acceptance to college was, she only applied to 3 schools, so she was being very, very risky, if you ask me. The first one she got, she did not get accepted. And her dad and I said, you know, there's other choices. We'll see what happens with the next one. And she did get accepted to the second one with scholarship based on her art portfolio. I would never open one of my daughter's letters, but it goes beyond that. What it goes to is I thought about what is it that mothers give their daughters or that you want as a daughter for your mother to give you, and that is belief in you. Maybe it's wild belief. Maybe it's not founded on what I see every day where you make mistakes and, you know, leave the door unlatched and maybe don't put the lid on the whatever in the refrigerator. Stereotype. It's believing in that person and trusting them to fall on their noses, fall on their keisters, forget to take their skate guards off and maybe get on the ice and you're not sliding because you're not properly using the tools, which are the blades of your skates, skater. My daughter right now, as I told Steve a few minutes ago, is applying to master's degree programs in social work. Every day or so she'll say, I'm worried about that I might not get in. I don't want to feel stupid. And I texted her back yesterday. I said, I believe in you. I love you. I think you will get in. You just need to do the work. And that's what I have to share today.
We're having a little bit of audio problems, I guess, too. Eva Marguerite, tell us all about it.
The microphones are on.
Well, now you know we're hearing you. What an intro. Hi, I'm so happy to be here on Mother's Day.
Microphones.
Oh, I forgot. Thank you. Is that working?
Try the other one.
It's working.
It's working, okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Speak
I
right
have-
into it, though. Right into it.
Okay. I have often thought that we who have children, we have them because we need to learn things that we could not learn any other way. And those who don't have children are spared. I became a mother the first time by accident. I was 21 when my son was born. Even then, I believe God had a hand in it. It anchored me and gave my life purpose, as did my second child, a daughter, at 23. I love being a mother. I dedicated myself to it. I even thought I needed to, in order to save my children, I had to quit painting, which had been my life and something I loved. But I thought I had to focus on one thing. So I became actually obsessed with being a mother, protecting my children, overprotecting my children. My greatest challenge came when, 16 years later, my son was 16 when he attempted suicide. The next day, a wise counselor told me I had to stop trying to control my children and protect them, and love my son enough to let him go. I had a lot to learn about love, and I did not know how much my son was teaching me. You need to learn to let go and let God, the counselor told me the next day. I remember thinking, how could he say such a thing? My son almost died. I asked him, how can you let go of a child who's tried to kill himself? He said, he's God's child too. I began learning how to let go. First I had to learn how to love myself, so I could love my children in a new way. And so I returned to painting, which was helpful. It got me out of Zen and back into myself. And then 2 years later, to my surprise, at the age of 39, I was surprised by the birth of Joy, a daughter, my third child. Looking way ahead, when she was 23 years later, I was honored to be in the birthing room with her at the birth of her first child, my grandson named Jeremiah. I realized how mothers of daughters, we become mothers of mothers. In that room, witnessing the birth of Jeremiah, I felt surrounded by ghosts. My own mother, who had me like Joy when she was 23, and she had also been in the birthing room with me. And I felt the ghost of my grandmother, who had 7 children who lived and 3 who died. I sensed the mystery of all of this we held in common, all children and mothers. Yesterday, I was unpacking books in our new house, Duncan's old house, my my new house. I've been married 2 years, but I'm still moving in. So my daughter had set all these books and bookcases up, so I was unpacking books, and I found this, my baby book, which I have not seen for numerous years, believe me. And I don't remember reading this. There's not many entries as you know how baby books go. You start off with great guns and it's an empty book. But in the empty book, I found this letter written in 1944. I thought that was ironic, the day before Mother's Day, not knowing exactly what I was going to say.
Wow.
And in this letter, she, I'm not going to make the whole thing, you're lucky. She says, it's a letter to me, her firstborn, and soon, in 1944, and she says, she hopes I will confide in her. She vows to trust me. She is full of hope for the future, our future. But within 4 years, she is abandoned by my father. And she has already weathered the storm of me having meningitis and losing most of my hearing at the age of 2. So now her husband leaves her when I'm 4. And so that's the first crisis. And then because our relationship, what I want to say was, our relationship was a bit rocky because life wore her down. She became an alcoholic. And I became stubborn. So our relationship was rocky. But now at 77, I have compassion for my mother, especially after reading this. And I think it's healing, these words that she's giving me on Mother's Day. So the words are, I'll have to read one little bit. The ending of the letter says, even my darling daughter, and she's 23, I will endeavor to be a good mother to you as is humanly possible. As a good mother, as good a mother as my mother is to me. Your always loving mother. So that was it, Chloe, your loving mother. And I have something I want to share with you that I thought, because I was praying for inspiration, and this is what came to mind, what I begin my thoughts with. I'm going to close it. It's a message that I want to share because it's my favorite message to parents and mothers. It's from the prophet by Gibran. And it speaks to me about giving our children not only roots but wings. If I can get through this poem, we'll be in good shape. Most of you know it, but I don't mind reading it again. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are not with you yet, and though they are with you yet, they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backward, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path to the infinite, and he bends you with his might, and his arrows may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. Even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable.
Thank you. We're gonna we're gonna enjoy some concerns in a distanced way. Whoa, hello. Okay. So if anyone has a joy or concern, just stand and share it. I'll repeat what they said so everybody can hear it, and Leanne will light the candles for you. Judy?
I appreciate your thoughts this week. I'm going to have breast cancer surgery on Thursday. And it's small, so hopefully, I'll have a really good outcome, but I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
For sure. Oh, Judy is going in for breast cancer surgery on Thursday, and with good expectations, but obviously a concern. Do you want to come up? Okay. I think you guys can come up. I'll let you do this yourself.
So we have some good news and some better news and some sad news. We are going to be moving to Colorado June 11th. And Sharon has got a promotion and a very good opportunity in a very small town, which, it so happens, we got married in. It's a town called Pagosa Springs. It's an hour east of Durango. And as soon as we're settled, we'll let everybody know and make your visits. We encourage you to come. So we're very pleased. We're sad, but we're pleased to be doing this. We found a very good buyer for our home. They are taking our house for the same reason that we bought our home. They have 2 small kids. They have grandparents that are going to move in with them. And I just showed the new buyer around and showed them all my plants and the garden, and they're very happy with that. The second thing we wanted to tell you about was how proud we are of our own children. Dylan and Miles just got awarded their black belt in Taekwondo yesterday. 3 years of perseverance and struggling to get them into their uniforms and drag them out the door and down the street and train 2, sometimes 3 or 4 days a week. They did it. So it's very much like this chapter is coming to a close as it is supposed to. So we feel complete. We're very happy to be back at PUUC amongst all of you in person. And yeah, we're very sad to be going as well.
Gift to us. And well, you'll be back visiting, I'm sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I figured that was something they needed to do themselves. Anyone else need to share? Steve?
I should wait for Father's Day, but because I recently had a birthday, and on that birthday, my granddaughter came, who just got accepted to UC Santa Cruz, and we sent out pictures, and one of my cousins says, "Has Tabitha become a God?" And she looks like it, but she's still Tabitha and makes great cakes. And then I also got to FaceTime with my grandson, Dylan, who, by the way, will hopefully not face too many of the problems of being a biracial child. But he is a biracial child, both white and Asian. And I have nieces and nephews are. Most of them have done very well.
So we've kids going off to college, and we have birthday celebrations and biracial grandkids. I'd like to light a candle for Lynn Taylor, who does a lot of, Lynn, but she also kind of manages our events here frequently and digs up weddings for us and stuff. She's having eye surgery, or just had eye surgery, so she's okay. But we want to conclude her and her thoughts. And probably more importantly, Naresh has 3 family members back in India, which is now, as you follow the news, exploding with COVID, and they're scurrying around trying to find oxygen for them. And these are brothers, so they're Naresh's age and older, and I think there's some level of threat there, just given the situation in the country. So let's hold Naresh's people, who Naresh does so much for us and brings us flowers all the time, and it's just a tender, sweet guy. So, and I think we should light a candle for the Spirit Grant. I mean, that's exciting news on an institutional level, right? I mean, that's huge stuff. And let's just take a moment, light one candle for all those who've lost our mothers, like myself and so many of us, probably most of us, obviously. And, you know, it's hard stuff, as it always is. Mother's Day is a joy and a concern as well. Okay. Amen to that. On Mother's Day, let's find a still space. Words by Leah Ongiri. On Mother's Day, let us mark how beautiful and complex it can be to mother and be mothered. To those who have mothered, we thank you. To those who rejoice in the work, the role, the presence of mothering and mothers, we celebrate with you. To those who are in the thick of parenting children of any age, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss through infertility, abortion, miscarriage, adoption, or running away, we mourn with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who have endured abuse at the hands of their mothers, we acknowledge and see you. To those who experience pain at the marking of this day, we witness you. To those who are single moms, grandmoms, stepmoms, foster moms, adoptive moms, mentor moms, and spiritual moms, we need you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. May we reflect with gratitude on this wide spectrum of mothering that happens in our lives and in our communities. Let's take thoughts of our own mothers and of being a mother to a moment of silence. We're to hear a video from Nancy Brigden, who fairly recently lost her mom, and we just did her memorial service with about 50 people on Zoom just a week or two ago. So Nancy's gonna be set in red, her mom's color, and use on that.
Of all the experiences in my life, being a mother has been the most fun and the most rewarding. My mom was very playful, and all the kids in the neighborhood used to like to come to our house and play. She would do things like put on music and ask us how it made us feel, and we would all dance around the living room, either stomping like monsters or twirling like fairy princesses. I read something once from Steven Spielberg's mom. When she would have garden parties, she would invite her lady friends over, and they would sit in the living room in and among all his sound equipment and cameras and lighting, and she never made him take it down. So when John was little and loved Thomas the train and would spend hours setting up the train tracks and creating his stories, I never made him take the trains down every night. Of course, we had a big mess in our living room, but it was a joyful mess. The downside of being a mom is that you're always worried about your kid. And I remember thinking one time, John was pretty small, if there were a bus careening down the street and he was in the road, in the way, I would dive in front of that bus and push him out of the way. And I'd never had that visceral feeling before. So mothers come in all shapes and sizes and genders because it's not really about the mother, it's about the mothering. And every mammal needs mothering to survive. And even non-mammals, and in fact, possibly our Mother Earth. So to all those mothers out there, people doing mothering, whether your kids are two-legged, four-legged, slither, or fly, happy Mother's Day. I hope you have a beautiful day and that you enjoy motherhood as much as I do.
Kim is going to share thoughts about mothering for us, and here we are. Make sure it's on.
Is it on?
You got to turn on the volume. Hold it down.
Hello? Okay. Hi. What does it mean to be a mother? I don't know. What I do know is that when I became a mother, I wasn't prepared to lose myself. It was a combination of bliss and fear and confusion. Hormones raged and dictated when I needed to feed my infant. My body innately knew everything. My mind was beholden to chemical changes making me laugh or cry or nurture like a puppet. There was something deep in my psyche calling all the shots, but I certainly wasn't my free will. As a child, I expected to grow up and meet a guy and have kids, but those thoughts and feelings changed as I grew into a woman, and it was far more important to mother myself first. The older I got, the more I wanted to just grow and learn and not be committed to one person or one place. Ironically, my odd jobs found a common thread of social justice and a committing to advocating for those among us that were unable to advocate for themselves, those without a voice, those without a mother. After working for many years as an advocate for youth in foster care, I began seeing the world as a place that needed so many mothers, and they were nowhere to be found. My whole world consisted of motherless children for years. I was an outreach worker to Christine. She aged out of foster care when she was 18. She needed a mother, a mentor, someone that got her and wanted to help her. She needed someone. She needed someone to call from the hospital at 2 in the morning. She wasn't sure if she had been raped. She needed to know I cared. She needed to know how to cook and budget and put up curtains. She needed a job and someone to nurture her talents. She needed a mother. I was told to not get too attached. remain aloof, professional. Simultaneously, I worked 40 hours a week in group homes where suicidal and homicidal children were placed after being taken from their mothers. As a caseworker making minimum wage, I was expected to take care of this troubled youth. The hospitals were overflowing and they could not accommodate these children, but they needed to be taken care of. The solution was inadequate, but the children were lost and traumatized. Each child had their own room in a house that was staffed with 2 people for every 6 kids in crisis. Some cried out in the night, and others had to be restrained until they could calm down. They were now children of the government. I was trained from a previous job in nonviolent restraint, but as a staff person making minimum wage, I was told I could not touch these kids because it was against the law. They were protecting them from possible abuse. Really? That depended on your definition of abuse. They needed a mother. The placement was supposed to be short, a few days or weeks. Most kids never left for months and months. There was nowhere to go. Where were their mothers? Who was helping them get on their feet so they could be reunited with their children? Some couldn't parent, a few didn't want to, others were drug addicted or abused themselves. These mothers needed mothers too. After several years trying unsuccessfully to move on, I just knew I would never have kids of my own. I parented enough for a lifetime and more intensely than any mother I knew. It seemed utterly irresponsible for anybody to have a child until all of these children had a mother. Why would anyone want to bring a new child into the world when so many kids were motherless? I thought perhaps I would move on, I'd make some decent money and adopt them all. They needed a home, and they needed to be touched. They taught me that mothers are not perfect, but they are not replaceable either. They allowed me to mother them without ever disrespecting their own moms. In an uncertain and upside-down world, one thing was certain. They wanted to be home with their mothers. After chronic fatigue and burnout, somehow I thought it was a good idea to take a job at the Boston Public School District. As a counselor and a teacher, I offered a parenting group against the advice of the school psychologist, Dr. Zach, who said, these parents are pathological. And he was concerned that I was underestimating their pathology. These mothers showed up against all odds. Some were the very mothers who had their kids taken from them. They needed support and love and understanding. They needed to be mothered. They needed to forgive themselves and each other and mother each other regardless of their flaws. I realized the power of being a mother when their children would sneak past the classroom and peek in the door with a grin or just a look of pride. These kids were tough, some were in gangs, but they melted with hope when they saw their mothers. Most kids had only seen their moms in school when they were being kicked out or in trouble. Now they saw their mothers being valued. These mothers taught me that personal struggles may get in the way of perfect parenting, but I never met a mother that didn't want her child to have a better life than her. That is what a mother is to me. Giving a new generation a hand up and wanting to protect and help them to have a better life regardless of the adversity that they themselves faced. So the moment I did become a biological mother, my instincts took over. But those mothers who showed up for each other and their kids taught me that my job as a mother was being an advocate. No matter how imperfect I would be, we envision mothering as sickly sweet and nurturing, but it is bitter and hard and persistent. Motherhood is knowing that you sacrifice so much, but you accomplish so much. It's the commitment to be there to make sure that sweet, helpless little human grows to their fullest potential by putting their needs first. Motherhood is a selfless act of giving your child to the world. Motherhood is the selfless act of letting go when you want to hold on. Motherhood is knowing you must let go when you want to hold on. Thank you.
You guys want to stay down there? Yeah. It's time for our offertory. We don't pass the plate for COVID reasons, but we do collect your money for practical reasons. There was a little girl and she asked her mom, "How did the human race appear?"
The mom answered, "God made Adam and Eve, and they had children, and so was all of mankind made."
2 days later, the little girl asked her dad the same question.
Dad answered, "Many years ago, there were monkeys from which the human race evolved."
The confused girl returned to her mom and said, "Mom, how is it possible that you told me the human race was created by God and Dad said it developed from monkeys?"
The mother answered, "Well, dear, it's very simple. I told you about my side of the family, and your father told you about his."
Give generously.
So I don't believe Jill made it today, so we're going to go from offertory music, which will encourage you to give lots of money, and then we're going to just do straight into the closing hymn. Can we manage that? All right. And then we're going to come back with Dan and Sharon. They're going to come right up here, and they're going to do closing words. Right up here.
This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all of our differences, beneath all of our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one. It binds us together in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity.
If you're able to, hold hands with the person next to you, otherwise extend your arms as if you were. And you can imagine the whole congregation here, past, present, and future, we're all together. May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam, namaste, and blessed be. And now our service truly begins. Sharon's been a worship associate. Dan has offered meditation for 4 years or whatever, varying some with COVID, mostly Tuesday nights, and was on the property committee and on the board and involved with RE, and one of the people brought pipes and bubbles to us for about 4 or 5 months, and just irreplaceable people, and we're gonna miss her. Go.